Chief Justice of India, Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, Hinduism, Indian judiciary, and the controversy in regard to his recent Gujarat visit. If you are interested, you are most welcome. Swagatham. A very distinguished judicial officer who retired as the judge of a high court brought to my notice an article published in the Scroll written by Ram Guha, in which he expresses his strong principles based disapproval of the Chief Justice Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud's recent visit to Gujarat, not so much the state Gujarat, as his visits to various temples there, in particular Dwarkadish temple, with all the media publicity attached thereto, and the subsequent statements that the Chief Justice of India, in his personal capacity and not in his official capacity, made as to the significance he happens to attach to these religious undertakings, in particular visiting the various temples in Gujarat, and the thoughts kindled in him by the sight of the Dhwaja or the flag atop the temple, and he sees the flag as a unifying force. A unifying force. Now, I happen to know Ram Guha pretty well. Like D.Y. Chandrachud, Ram Guha too has been a student of St. Stephen's College. And I have to say right at the beginning that if I have to choose between Chandrachud and Ram Guha, any day I will prefer Chandrachud. Because what most people don't realize is that, like religion itself, secularism can be a domain of very serious prejudice. In fact, for a good number of people who present themselves in the public domain as enlightened liberal thinkers, secularism is nothing but the umbrella under which their strong prejudices are harbored as well as articulated. I don't want to go into my personal experiences with Ram Guha, experiences of rabid communalism under or behind the facade of secularism. Let me not be personal in this matter, but I have to caution my viewers right at the beginning that my effort in this particular analysis, and I hope I can conclude it in one session, if not, I'll have to do one more session. My main attempt here is to strike a balance. Let me explain why it is important. My training as a thinker within the spiritual vision of Jesus Christ, not Christianity, I emphasize. My training under the role model of Jesus Christ makes me committed to and feel obliged to look at the other side of the issue. Now, there are various instances in the four Gospels in which this pattern becomes very clear. If I go on, cite and examine those examples, time will get out of hand. But you will see that it was a distinguishing feature of Jesus' outlook on public life, on persons, on situations, on realities, that he always sought to see the other side of the issue, which is a necessary discipline in order to avoid partial, one-eyed bias, which is the limitation that most human beings suffer from. In fact, one might even say to be human is to be partial. And therefore, we have to make a very special effort to outgrow our partiality. And why should we do so? And this is important for me to state here, both because the name of Gandhi is involved in this discussion, and also because I'm bringing the name of Jesus Christ. Uh, Gandhi and Jesus Christ shared one thing at least in common, and that is an overwhelming, unapologetic commitment to truth. In fact, I would equate Gandhi with truth. And Jesus identified himself with truth. He said, I am the truth. As far as Gandhi was concerned, to him, God was truth and truth was God. So that's the importance. Now, I request my viewers to have a little patience with me because I'm going to explain something which is not at all explained. It takes a little effort. Please bear with me. What is the spiritual logic to be committed to seeing the other side of the situation, the other side of the equation, the other side of the issue, if one is to be a seeker after truth? Let's fix it very clearly in our mind. To be spiritual is to be committed to truth. Now the question is, how are you to seek, find, and uphold truth? Why is it that truth is always a casualty in the world in which we live? Why is it that human beings by nature fail to see the truth? My understanding is that we cannot see the truth so long as we remain partial, prejudiced, and biased. What is partiality? Partiality in practical terms is nothing but the insistence that only one half of the equation is real, or only one half of the equation is true. The other half is either irrelevant or it's untrue. Now, it's a mathematical impossibility. You cannot have an equation, only one half of which is relevant and the other half is not. It's an absurd mathematical situation. Now, let me not go into mathematics. Let me stay focused on the Hindu philosophical vision of Advaita, non-dualism. Advaita, non-dualism. Reality is one. All right? Now, this insight is there in almost every spiritual tradition I am familiar with, including the spiritual vision of Jesus Christ. A clear text here is Jesus saying, I and my Father are one. It's precisely because of this commitment to non-dualism, of commitment to Advaita, if you like, commitment to an integrated, unified idea of reality, that Jesus urges his disciples even to love their enemies. Such a thought can never occur within a dualistic mind. A dualistic mind will insist on hating and, if possible, eliminating the enemy so that you can live in peace. So the ultimate proof of Jesus' Advaitic sense of the irreducible oneness of reality, what's called the primal unity, that reality is ultimately one and it is God-centered, is the teaching that we should love even our enemies. There are other texts, other instances. Again, time doesn't allow me to undertake a comprehensive examination of this aspect. Now, the most important thing to realize is what I'm going to say now. If you're committed to this kind of Advaitic philosophy, non-dualistic spiritual vision, the conviction that God is the origin of everything and therefore, in spite of all the multiplicity, diversity, variety, and contrariness that you see in the phenomenal world, ultimately everything constitutes one single integrated reality within which there are no hostilities, contradictions, antinomies, and disconnections. It's important. Now, the practical outworking of this concept is that you should be committed to truth. What is truth? Truth pertains to this idea, and only to this idea, that everything is one. Now, if you reject that idea, then you only have the partial approach to life. For example, either you believe that all of reality is one, you and I, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Muslim, BJP, Congress and Marxist, all these diversities and contrariness that you see in the phenomenal world. Phenomenal world means world as it is, the world that we see around us, phenomenal world. Now, if you only look at the various elements in the phenomenal world, you can never believe that reality is one. In fact, you would believe that reality is a kind of unending sequence of fragmented events and individuals and situations that add up to nothing. It is this sense of the shall I say, the fragmented, incompatible, disparate nature of reality that William Butler Yeats laments in The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the earth. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed. That is to say, there is no point of coherence. So there are two completely different points of view. One is that everything belongs together as one. In the Hindu way of thinking, everything coheres in Brahma. Or in the Christian concept, everything coheres in God. God is the origin of everything. And therefore, it is important to see the other side of the issue, because if I want the complete picture of the situation involving you and me, it can never be you against me or I against you. It is you and I together. Only you and I, or the point of view you advocate and the point of view I advocate, together will constitute the truth. The limitation of human nature will make us believe that only I am true. If I am only true, then you have to be false or wrong. Or only if only you are right, then I have to be wrong. It is in this manner that conflicts arise. And in this conflict, in any conflictual situation, truth becomes a necessary casualty. So please see the connection between the idea of reality as one, Advaita, the commitment to truth, which is a necessary aspect of Advaita. You cannot claim to be a follower of the Advaitic spiritual vision if you are not completely committed to truth. And the commitment to truth rules out any partial advocacy. Therefore, I don't understand how the ideologues and the proponents of the Hindutva vision, Hindutva ideology, can effect a neat break between the India-born religions and religions that have had their origins outside India. It is a completely contrary view. This view totally contrary to the genius of the true Hindu spiritual vision, which is a unifying vision. The reason why it was also a tolerant and Catholic spiritual outlook. Whereas Christianity, because it got admixed with European culture, which was always dualistic, and therefore sought to conquer and assimilate or enslave whatever was different to itself. Unfortunately, that dualistic vision is now overpowering the Advaitic vision of true Hinduism. And the greatest irony of the Indian history today, Indian context today, is that the dualistic vision of the West has now completely overcome the Advaitic vision of Hinduism, and that ideology is now projecting itself as the defender and the savior of Hinduism. I can't think of a more monstrous contradiction than this. I don't want to deal too much with it. I will leave it to my enlightened Hindu friends to unravel this. People like Justice Guha Chandrachud should be addressing issues like this. Unfortunately, he doesn't do it. I don't know why. Maybe after his retirement he would. So, the need that human beings experience for religion. Now, I think this must be understood if you have to examine Chandrachud's religiosity and its compatibility or incompatibility with his position as the Chief Justice of India. Now, why is it that we need religion at all? Actually, we need religion precisely to grow out of our limitations. But what happens is that the more religious we become, the more legitimized our limitations become. In fact, we ascribe all our limitations to God, all our partialities and prejudices to God, and we persuade ourselves to believe that God wants us to eliminate those who are different to us, though God wants us to hate those who are different to us, and so on and so forth. God is one, and that's the truth. And that truth implies the unambiguous discipline of having to see everything as belonging together. It is for this reason that I have always rejected any communal advocacy. The reason why I've taken a forthright stand against the bishop-sponsored kindling of animosities between Christians and Muslims in Kerala. There is a philosophical, theological concern behind it. Though, rather than understand it, I am being caricatured as a pro-Muslim what is that? Somebody on the Muslim pay or whatever. Anyway, that's another issue. Now, why is it that we need religion? We need religion because by nature, we are inclined to be limited, partial, selfish, and incapable of seeing the truth and doing justice. Why is it that we become incapable of seeing the truth and doing justice? Simply because we are partial. And we need to be therefore delivered out of our limitations. Now the question is there anything that can deliver us out of our limitations? In the entire history of humanity, there's only one thing that human beings have created or have been blessed with, if you like, and that's spirituality. All the spiritual interventions that have happened in the history of humankind in the last 4,000, 5,000 years at the very least have this one thing in common. That is to intervene in the human predicament so as to lead people out of their limitations. For example, one huge limitation limitation in human nature is the inability to lift our imagination or our awareness above the level of our practical mundane reality, what's called hand-to-mouth existence. But because we are created in a special way, or we are unique creations, or if you don't believe in creation, we are unique among animals, the animal kingdom, we have a need to go beyond the hand-to-mouth existence. Anthropologists tell us that when it became possible for our great ancestors for the first time to stand on 2 feet, the first thing they did was to look up to the skies. And that's the beginning of philosophy. Now it's very interesting, therefore, that in the story of the birth of Jesus Christ, the two categories of people who came to know about the birth of Jesus before anybody else. The first was the Magi, whose business it was to study the heavenly objects, the stars, the planets. The second were the shepherds of Bethlehem. It's very interesting. So, man looking up. Now, why do we look up? We look up because we can never be satisfied with our life, whatever experiences there are, necessary, valuable though they be. We can never limit ourselves to whatever happens on the horizontal plane, the terrestrial plane. So we have to have this heavenward awareness. It is not that God sits up there. It is that we want to rise above the flat horizontal level of existence. Why? Because we know, even if we are not educated in universities, we know that life on the horizontal plane alone is incomplete. and that it needs to be complemented with this vertical awareness. A book that deals very well with this pattern is Count Leo Tolstoy's book On Life. On Life. How the animal in us needs to be refined out of our nature by aligning ourselves with the vertical plane of reality. Now, this completion, that is, if you like, the y axis, x axis, that's a completion of reality, is important because only within this complete picture does truth exist. It was because of this that Pontius Pilate did not get an answer from Jesus when he raised the question, what is truth? There's no point in explaining what truth is to Pontius Pilate because he is sitting on the seat of partiality. Even if you give him a 10-year-long discourse on truth, he will not be able to make use of it because so long as he is seated on the throne of Roman authority, he will not be able to see and accept truth. It's an insight very relevant to the Indian context today. Why? Post-truth politics rather than truth-driven politics is the order of the day. So it is in this kind of a context that we need to see the kind of longing that Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud is experiencing. Now, I remind you again, I don't want to be prejudiced against anyone, including Ram Guha. But if he is prejudiced, I'll have to say that it's a prejudice. So if Justice D.Y. Chandrachud as a human being, as an individual, feels the need to supplement, complement, enrich, reinforce, enlarge, whichever word you want, his horizontal knowledge. Legal knowledge is only horizontal knowledge. All disciplines of secular knowledge are horizontal knowledge. That's why knowledge, no matter how much you gather, will never satisfy you. We need wisdom. One of the great philosophers of Athens, who lived some 600 years before Jesus, his name was Heraclitus. 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 T-E-S, I think. He said that while we need more and more and more of information, knowledge, there is no guarantee that all the knowledge that you will gather will ever make you wise. The reason is, he doesn't explain it in that. By the way, you can actually download a book titled The Fragments of Heraclitus. The Fragments of much of what Heraclitus wrote is lost. Fortunately, a few fragments have survived, some 40-50 pages. They are available on the net. Please, it's beautiful, very, very rewarding to read. The Fragments of Heraclitus. Now, there he says that on the one hand, we must increase our knowledge, but the sum total of your knowledge will not make wise. Why? Because knowledge is only on this horizontal plane. It needs to be supplemented with this vertical awareness. The synthesis of the horizontal and the vertical alone makes you wise. So, Justice Chandrachud is a very, very learned man. There's no question about it. He's also a very clear thinker. But I give him full credit for the fact that he's aware of the limitations of all his knowledge, and therefore he realizes that he needs resource of a different kind. Now, whether his mode of seeking the resource of a different kind is above blame, is completely scientific, whether it is acceptable within the paradigm of secular liberal democracy, whether it is compatible with the high office he holds, is a different question. It's a different question. Let's not mix up issues. What I'm saying is, I give full credit to Justice Chandrachud for realizing that the sum total of his secular knowledge is legal knowledge, which is prodigious. Prodigious. He's one of the best students that college produced. I think he topped the Delhi University, and so his scholarship is never in doubt. But I give him credit for realizing that all his profound and prodigious secular knowledge is inadequate and it needs to be complemented. And he realizes that it needs to be complemented with a source completely different from this. That's why he's turning to religion. But that's where the problem lies. Whether religion as religion can meet those needs is a highly problematic issue. I'll come to that. I just flagged this issue now without going into detail. I need to go into details, but at this point in time, I will not. So this is one big issue. And Ramachandra Guha, without really providing this framework of spiritual secular realities, goes hammer and tongue after that Justice Chandrachud, which I believe is nothing but the outworking of his secular prejudice. Now, he also resents the claim by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud that in his assumption that by visiting these various temples, particularly in Gujarat, and in particular the Dwaragadish temple, and by looking at the dwaja, the flag atop the temple, he will get the inspiration to make better sense of the onerous task that is called upon to shoulder, namely handling this great task of delivering justice to a population of 140 crores. I mean, it's a mind-boggling task. Therefore, I can very well empathize with Justice Chandrachud in his realization that his unaided personal abilities, skills, knowledge, etc., all his training as a competent legal or judicial officer is inadequate to discharge his duties to the optimum level. And I give him full credit for it. There's no way I can blame that intuition, that awareness, and I consider that as a sign of his intellectual humility. Let me put it very clearly. There's no point in being prejudiced against anyone. I may or may not like Justice Chandrachud. I may or may not endorse his standpoint, but I have to be truthful, I have to be unbiased in understanding him as a fellow human being, which is what I'm trying to do. All right, so then Justice Chandrachud claims that Gandhi is his main inspiration in undertaking his tour to various temples in Gujarat. Now, there Ram Guha is on firm factual grounds when he says that Gandhi is a very inappropriate reference to make in this context because Gandhi did not see true religion as practiced or exemplified in temples, which is very true, factually very true. Now here I have to say something very important. Ram Guha makes a factual observation that Gandhi did not spend much time visiting temples. He makes a reference to the visit that Gandhi made to Madurai Meenakshi temple in 1946, and that's in the context of major temple reform by which the temple is open to the Dalits in the area, so on and so forth. The question to understand, and Ram Guha doesn't say anything about it, but I think it's important that we understand it. Why is it that Mahatma Gandhi did not consider temples to be very important in the religious life of a people? There are various reasons for it, but I'm going to take up only just one line of thought in the interest of brevity and clarity. And it's important for me to state, and I wish I can state it with the emphasis it deserves. So long as a person is committed to truth, he cannot take the places of worship seriously. I've said this on many occasions before. If you go back and review some of the videos I've shared with you already, I've said repeatedly that when a spiritual tradition gets organized as an organized religion, of which temples become the foremost symbol with the priestly class appended to it, there is a fundamental shift from truths to untruths. All religions bank on superstition, and superstitions are compacted entirely of falsehood. That's why they are called superstitions. And it is not true faith but true superstition that thrives in places of worship, whether people like it or not. I can say this say this with confidence about churches. I leave it to others to decide about their places of worship. Therefore, Gandhi, because of his idea of God as one, and his total commitment to the Hindu spiritual vision of Advaita, non dualism, therefore, the whole universe as one, within which there can be no enmity, no fragmentation, no us against them, get rid of them so that we can be truly ourselves. This kind of nonsense, which is today very popular, Gandhi found temples, places of worship in general, bore false witness to God. Why? Because God is universal, God is omnipotent, omnipresent, present everywhere. Then how can you spread the canard that in order to meet God, in order to have fellowship with God, you need to go to that temple or this church or that mosque or this Gurudwara? Isn't it utter falsehood? And not only that, Gandhi realized that temples, churches, mosques, etc., with the priestly class attached to it, serve as a point of division and fragmentation. But for the places of worship, but for the priestly class, people would have lived together happily in brotherhood and amity, in mutual love and cooperation. The human family is fragmented, divided into tens and thousands of pieces because of these religious organizations. Again, it's a huge subject. Time wouldn't allow me to go more into these details. So, what did Gandhi do? In order to obviate the divisiveness inherent in established organized religion, in which it is always my religion against your religion, my God against your God, my religious book against your religious book, Gandhi practiced and promoted interfaith prayer sessions. I remember that very special experience I had when I visited Sabarmati Ashram in 2002. And I went and stood in the courtyard where Gandhi used to hold this all religions prayer meeting. So it was a great experience for me. I became very emotional. So a person who has that vision cannot take temples, churches, mosques very seriously. Only people who have no such spiritual vision, people who do not believe in Advaita, the idea that all unity is one and everything that we see belong together, can confine or imprison their gods in their particular temples and then say, oh, don't touch my God, don't touch my temple, untouchability. Christians will say, oh, don't have anything to do with un-Christians. Muslims will say, oh, don't have anything to do with kafirs. Now, all this shows spiritual poverty, the blindness induced by religion. So certainly, Ram Guha is on very good grounds to say that Gandhi is about that. And therefore, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud's claim that in his idea or assumption that he can get some special enlightenment by visiting various temples in Gujarat cannot be put at the doorstep of Mahatma Gandhi. It is wrong and dishonest, or certainly it is inappropriate to invoke the name of the Mahatma in the context of, ascribing to places of worship the sort of spiritual significance they really don't have. So there he is on solid grounds. Though, as I said, he does not bother either because he doesn't want to or because he does not know provide the spiritual intellectual framework for understanding it. Now I notice that it's already 34 minutes. So quite clearly, I need to do one more unit. So I'll break off now, and in the next unit I'll take up Ram Guha's article in somewhat greater detail, and offer further comments. Instances like this are valuable to us in order to clarify our thinking. We don't undertake this kind of analysis in order to privilege one against the other, or in order to criticize Ram Guha or to support D.Y. Chandrachud. As far as I'm concerned, both are the old students of St. Stephen's College. I'm neutral. But I'm not neutral in terms of ideas. What is wrong, what is prejudice, what is enlightenment is enlightenment. There's no question about it. So there, if somebody is either mistaken or is misrepresenting facts, I'll have to call it out and do so without any animosity to the person concerned. And I do so also because such opportunities afford us the ideal context to clarify some of these concepts which otherwise remain in a very vague and nebulous fashion, which doesn't help. So in the next video, in the next unit, I'll deal with the text of Ram Guha's article published by Scroll, in which he criticizes the Chief Justices of India's public display of religious fervor. Thank you. Goodbye for the present.